Hello and welcome back. In our society, the one that we live in right now, there is something that we have always looked at, which is called the psychology of money. And this time round, we want to have a look at it in African households. Because what I've come to discover is that the way we look at money as Africans and the way we look and the way the Western world looks at money, or let me just call the Western world looks at money, is very, very different. We have very different circumstances, yet we are measured by the same kind of, or would I call it? We are measured by the same kind of standards. Yet our monies are very different. Our things are very, very, very much different. For example, in Africa, we look at money as a communal resource, not as a private asset. My money is never my money. It is, yes, I earn the money, but it is also my family's money in many ways. For example, a young professional in Nairobi, Lagos, London, Birmingham, New York, who is an African, they rarely just earn for themselves. Their income is supposed or is expected to support their parents, their siblings, their extended relatives, school fees for their younger siblings, medical emergencies back home, and all that. It has a word, it's called the Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are. And while this builds strong family safety nets, it also creates pressure and delayed personal wealth accumulation. Saving for a house deposit in the diaspora, for example, or just saving for a house just to buy without, like 100% mortgage that you get in certain kinds of banks in Kenya, for example. But if you're in the diaspora, saving for that 30% that is required for you to buy a house and you have family back home is no joke at all. It's a hard thing, it takes time. And when you have to pay what we call black tax, which leads me to the reality number 2 of the black tax, closely tied with communalism, there is the concept of the black tax. And that is the informal but deeply felt obligation to financially support an extended family. And it happens to everyone without exception. So, unlike the formal tax, this one is unstructured, emotionally driven, and non-negotiable in many cases. When somebody calls you from, like back home, and they say they want something 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's hardly ever a negotiation. It is always like an obligation that you have to do. So, first generation migrants have this problem. A portion of their income is already spoken for before it arrives. And financial planning must accommodate these unpredictable requests that come from their families back home. And personal and financial goals and investments are often postponed to take care of these unpredictable requests that will come from your family members. So, of course, this creates a psychological tension between self progress and family responsibilities. And it has been seen as you speak to very many of our people who live in the diaspora. Quite a number of them, almost 90% of them, have some form of black tax that they pay back home, especially the first generation, the first generation migrant, first generation migrant. So those ones they feel it, but of course after some time this always goes away. Then the other thing, number 3, the other difference in the way we Africans look at income and money is that we have a survival mindset vis-a-vis a wealth building mindset. So many African economies have historically experienced currency volatility. So Kenya shilling is up and down against the dollar, against the pound, against the euro. Inflation spikes out of nowhere, like Nigeria happened, what happened in Nigeria some time ago and what happened in Ghana. And then political uncertainty, Southern Sudan, Somali, as in the examples are many, and limited social safety nets because of this instability. So the government have no way of creating social safety nets in many of the African nations because of the survival mindset that we already have. So this survival first mentality around money, it makes us not to ask, how do I grow wealth over 30 years? Because wealth is grown. But often what we ask ourselves is, how do I remain financially stable this year? So that is the concern. That is the mindset of a normal Kenyan. That's the mindset of a normal African man, a mindset of a normal African woman or a family. That is all they are looking at. They are always looking at, how do I remain financially stable, instead of thinking of, how do I grow wealth in the next 10 or 15 years. So this has to change, which leads to two contrasting behaviors. Number one, extreme caution. So we are always extremely cautious on where we put our money. You talk to people about money markets, and they feel they don't feel like they want to be, the first question they ask is my money safe? When you're talking to people about money markets, when you're talking to people about fixed deposits, when you're talking to people about all those programs that is supposed to build wealth, the first question is my money safe? So there's that avoidance of financial risk. So there's a preference for saving rather than investing. So I'd rather save rather than invest. I'd rather put my money in a savings account, which I think is relatively safe, rather than put the money in a venture, in a business venture, or investing, because I'm afraid that I may lose that money. So there is that fear of losing hard-earned money, because you've worked hard. It is true, you've worked really hard for your money. So, and then there is the high risk hustling, number two. So you have multiple side hustles, informal business ventures, quick return investments, DESI. You remember those pyramid schemes? And that explains why you may find someone who is both very conservative with savings, but yet willing to take bold risks in business. So they are very conservative with savings, but they take very bold risks in business. They are trying to make it. It's a contradiction. And, is it a contradiction? Probably. No, it's more of an adaptation. We want to make money fast. So you're willing to risk more than, play it safe. High risk hustling. Yeah. So those are two behaviors that normally come out of that mentality of hustling, of being cautious about our money, survival mindset vis-a-vis wealth building mindset. So something we need to figure it out. And of course, there is the side hustle culture. So in many African households, relying on a single income stream is seen as dangerous. Well, in these other countries, it is not a big deal, apart from probably the US. But even in the UK, in Europe, in China, most of the time you just be one hustle, it takes care of everything. But in Africa, you can't do that. And more so in Kenya. Let me talk about Kenya, because that's where I come from. I know that. In Kenya, it cannot be so. So the psychology behind this is very simple. You never depend on one source of income. So you run a small business alongside your employment, bringing concentration issues. You trade goods locally and across borders, or invest in informal ventures. So that is how you find yourself with this side hustle culture. Yeah. So this kind of mindset is visible among Africans in the diaspora. They are not exempt. So they sell products online, they invest in land back home, they participate in group saving schemes, etc., etc. So the side hustles are not just about ambition, they are about security and control. So the reason why we are doing these side hustles is for security and control. Whereas other communities, they don't do that. The reason why when they get into a business, they get into a business to make money and to grow the business. It's not for security and control, no. It is for them. They're trying to grow something. They are trying to be better than their fathers and their grandparents. They are trying to be better than that. So they are trying to move away from that thing that they had with, like where they grew up, the level they were left at by their grandparents. They are trying to move further than that. So it is not for security or control, it is for growth for them. It's to grow the wealth. But in Africa, we are not yet there. Then the other thing that you find the psychology of money in an African setting or home is preference for tangible assets. We do prefer land, houses, and livestock. Yeah. These are more valued than bonds, treasury bonds, pension funds, stocks, insurances. Yeah, because we believe that these tangible assets have, number one, security. So you see the thing surrounds security. We are coming back to security. Number one, security, and then status, symbol. So that's why in the UK, as an example, or even in the US, Africans are the ones who drive the biggest cars. But the people with the biggest wealth, they drive Vitz, they drive Not, they drive small vehicles. But the Africans are the ones with the big Mercedes GLS. They're the ones who are driving big cars. Yeah, status, symbol, and then legacy. Yeah. So you're looking for something to pass down. This is a positive, actually. They're looking for something to pass down to future generations. Remember, status was about visible proof of success. We are trying to show people that we have succeeded, which may not be the case. Because if you don't have $1 billion in your portfolio of investments, there is no success, nothing like that. So what does this mean? This means that there's low liquidity, cash flow constraints because of the lifestyle we've adopted. There is underinvestment in the financial market, and there is difficulty responding to emergencies. Make sense? Yeah. So you're asset rich, but cash poor. And this affects many of our households. Asset rich, but cash poor. Then we have something else. Number 6 is the generational money trauma. So financial behaviors in African households are often shaped by stories passed down through generations. So, and these stories may include periods of extreme poverty, loss of wealth due to political instability, economic crisis or displacement, and all that. So you grow hearing stories about how your grandfather faced this and that, your father faced this and that, your family member did this and that. And what that does, it brings in fear, it brings in urgency and survival. And let me tell you, this is affecting everyone across board in Africa, especially for more in Kenya. I can talk about Kenya, not generally Africa. In Kenya, it's affecting everyone because if you look at the politicians, the reason why they're just hoarding money, it's the urgency to get to a certain point of wealth and survival, and they also fear. So they want to go into politics because they are afraid, that money they have earned, working genuinely may go away. Yeah. So there is what is called the money trauma. Yeah. So this influences the risk tolerance, spending habits, and saving behavior. For example, a parent who has experienced scarcity may discourage investment risks. And it is always a thing. Yeah. If they have experienced scarcity, they may discourage investment risk. Or a child may grow up overly cautious or conversely overly aggressive financially. Why? Because they have seen it before. Money carries emotional weight. It's not just the numerical value, but they have seen that cycle of poverty. They have seen that cycle of the struggle they had to go through, the struggle the parents had to go through, and they have seen it all. So that child may grow up not being overly cautious. They will be overly cautious. They will be overly aggressive financially. Yeah. The mentality that I cannot be poor. So they are aggressive like you've never seen before. So that's a paradox. Yeah. Which leads me to number 7, which is the social status and the man in the car paradox. So in many African societies, wealth is not only accumulated, it is also displayed. Let's talk about our Nigerian brothers. Let's talk about our Luo brothers. Let's talk about our Kamba brothers. Yeah. Wealth is displayed. Visible success brings respect, social standing, and family pride. That is called the man in the car paradox. So, where individuals will invest in visible assets, for example, big cars, big weddings, lifestyles where they live, while neglecting long-term wealth building. So that's the thing. So you're neglecting long-term wealth building for right now and now, and it's affecting a lot of because a lot of Africans are making money in many ways, but instead of investing in long-term wealth building, generational wealth building, they are investing for now, and I blame it on YOLO. Do you know what YOLO means? But that's a story for another day. So the owning of a car or owning a building at home or hosting large event communities, it's a show of I have succeeded and my family is secure, which may never really be the case. Then the other psychology of money aspect for an African homestead is the informal financial systems and discipline. So, despite limited access to formal education, African households often demonstrate strong financial discipline through informal systems such as chamas, that is rotating saving groups, or community lending cycles, or peer accountability systems. This is a very positive one. This one, you will never see it elsewhere. I've not seen it elsewhere. I've not seen it in the UK. I've not seen it. I've not heard it in the US. Probably there is, but it comes very formally. So this kind of systems encourage consistent savings, provide access to lump sums, and build financial habits. So they are basically based on truth and social pressure rather than contracts and institutions. It's a gentleman's agreement. So they're effective in enforcing discipline more than the formal banking system. So that's another aspect of the psychological money psychology in an African setting, African household setting. And then something else that is emerging in this is the evolving role of women. So more women are in leadership, more women are income earners, more women are investors, more women are decision makers, more women are at the center of money transfers and all those kind of things. So they are prioritizing stability and long-term planning and investing in education and family well-being and building independent wealth. A very big positive to our African households. So women are the financial anchors, or many women are financial anchors. And if they're not financial anchors, they are complementary anchors. So they are quietly driving the economic transformation in Africa. And finally, point number 10, this is the diaspora dynamics between two worlds. So this is Africans living abroad, especially in places like the UK, USA, Asia, Middle East, Europe. They experience a unique financial psychology, which is operate between a Western financial system and an African expectational system. So let me explain this. Western financial system is very structured and very individualistic. It's about me, but in a very structured way. While the African expectation system is very communal. It's open, it's relational. So you will find it everywhere you go, even when you're discussing it with your fellow people. So what this creates is a dual financial obligation between the individualistic and structured Western financial system and the communal, relational African expectation system. So it's a dual financial obligation. And then there is, of course, the currency conversion pressures. So you're always debating on which one has the better rate. And the emotional strain, of course, supporting to families from, not families really, but to systems. There is what you want and there is what the community needs. So earning, for example, in dollars or in pounds may look very strong on paper. But once you pay the rent, once you remit money back home to your family, and once you pay the family obligations, the reality can feel very, 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 very different. So these are some of the things like 10 points that I just picked out as the psychology of money in an African household. So, well, in conclusion, let me say this. This the psychology of money in an African household is built on responsibility and resilience. It's quite different from how a person of your own age who is not an African believes and behaves. So in many African households, it is not flawed. Is it not? It's not flawed at all. It is just a context, the context in which it reflects, because it reflects a history of resilience, a culture of shared responsibility, and a need to adapt to uncertainty, because those are realities that we live in Africa. However, on the converse, is that it represents challenges for with delayed wealth accumulation, financial pressure, and limited investment diversification, because investment diversification is absolutely important. So what do we need to do going forward? So the opportunity going forward lies in balancing both worlds between the Western world expectations and the African world expectations, individualistic versus relational. So you maintain the communal values, but also embrace wealth building structures. So, we always say haba na haba ucheza kibaba. So that's something that we should always take into consideration. I hope you enjoyed this particular episode, just talking about the psychology of money in an African household, how it looks like. It's very different from a Western household or a European household. If you want some more information on the same, you can go on to www.goldentieafrica.com. It will give you, there are articles there on this plus many, many more that can be of much value to you. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. See you next time. What kind of psychology do you have? Do you have the Western psychology or do you have the African psychology when it comes to money? Adios. God bless.